real briefly, that is our sheriff, Sheriff Dan Starry right now. Good fella, and he's been there 25 years. He started as a deputy, just like everyone else, and he's worked his way up. He was a school resource officer for many years. He also was a canine handler. He was a field training officer, which I'll tell you what that's about later in this slide. He also became a sergeant. He became a commander. He became a chief deputy, and now he's a sheriff. So he's, over those 25 years, he's really worked his way up, and he's earned every step of it on the way. So that is who our sheriff is right now. So the question is, who are we? Just a little back history for you guys, which I thought you might like. We like to say 1840 is really kind of when we started, but 1849 is when Washington County became pretty much what it is. But when it was a territory, we still had law enforcement within that Stillwater area, that jurisdiction. The county was originally 9 different counties of what they are now, right? Until in 1849 when they kind of split it up like that. As you saw, as you can just read up there, the first governor, or the governor elected who the first sheriff was at that time. And pretty much the population was a lot less than what it is right now. And I think we all know that. It's grown quite a bit over the years. So because of that, we obviously had to grow. We had to develop, and we had to deal with all the people that we had. Today, we are definitely well into 250,000 people. And as you guys know, do you all live within the county, or, okay, whereabouts are you all from, if you don't mind me asking? Cottage Grove, Newport, St. Paul Park, okay. Dakota County. I think you're lost. Yes, you are. True story. Well, we'll still welcome you. So with that, you guys have noticed just how much this county has exploded with just people. There's so many people, and it is going up nonstop. So for example, Hugo, you guys know where Hugo is? It's just north of White Bear. That's in Washington County. They have 2 developments that are going to be at least 300 homes apiece that are going in. Lake Elmo, that's exploding. Woodbury is. I mean, when I can say I remember driving on Valley Creek when it was a gravel road. I mean, it's just, yeah, right? It's crazy. So it is absolutely growing quite a bit. Have fun looking at some of those pictures on there. We primarily serve, obviously, the jurisdictions that don't have their own police department, right? And don't have a contract with anybody. So by state statute, we're obligated that we have to patrol those areas. And we also have contracts with certain cities as well to provide 24-hour coverage. So what I mean by that is, for example, Newport, we'll use Newport, they have a contract with us so that a deputy will be working in their city limits 24/7, all right? Whereas Denmark Township, that's where I live, there's no contract, so there's not necessarily going to be an officer working in Denmark Township 24/7. They could be maybe up by 94 in St. Croix Trail, so kind of by the border there. They could be in Newport helping that officer out. They could kind of be all over. So the time and response time is going to be more delayed with that. So that's up to each city, township, jurisdictions what they want for the coverage, honestly. I will keep going with this, and I'll just kind of put all this up so that you guys can look at all that. So nonetheless, we do provide coverage throughout the whole county. We work really well with all of our city police departments. So St. Paul Park, we work with them. Cottage Grove, we work well with them. Woodbury, you name it. There's not a city in this county we do not work well with. And you kind of have to, right? There's only so many of us with this big size population, so we have to rely on each other to make sure that we get whatever needs to get done. So as you can see, some of the different departments that we have, we at the Sheriff's Office have the 911 comm center, so the dispatchers. They're the ones that receive the calls throughout the whole county. So if you have an emergency in Cottage Grove, that 911 center is in Stillwater at the Sheriff's Office. It's on the 4th floor, 3rd or 4th floor. We also obviously have the jail. That's a responsibility of ours. We have, I think it's about 200, I don't know if that's in here, but there's about 250 beds that are in that jail. Usually I think last I heard on average we're at about 225 on people that stay in there. Now those are people that might be brought there overnight and they have to stay there a night or a couple nights until they see a judge for whatever their offense was, to people who are sentenced to be there no more than 1 year. Okay, so maybe they were convicted for a crime, but they're not going to be staying there any more than a year. If they're a year and 1 day, then they would have to be in a prison, so like Stillwater Prison or Oak Park Heights or you name it. All right. Our correctional staff are not sworn officers, so a civilian, if you want to consider it that. Doesn't matter though. We're partners still. We work hand in hand. So any help they need, we help them, and same for us. Their primary objective is to make sure that that jail operates. They take care of the inmates. They control anything that might get out of hand and make sure they get their meds. If people are on suicide watch, they watch them to make sure they don't do anything, right? So their main purpose is the jail. For us, we do kind of everything else with that. Other things that are on here, the civil process, K-9, I'll touch into that a little bit more later in the slideshow. Obviously patrol, which is the squad cars, you see us driving around in that, and waterways, and I'll talk about that later in the slideshow as well. We do have a lot of volunteer units. Some of those volunteer units are with our dive team. We also have volunteers with the Explorer program. I'll touch on that also a little later. We have volunteers that are chaplains. So it's whether they're Catholic, Lutheran, you name it, could be nonpartisan, it doesn't matter. As long as they're affiliated with some sort of community or church and they want to volunteer to be a chaplain, they can do that with us. What they do is, in particular, if we have somebody, we might have to do a death notification. So maybe someone's mother, father, son, daughter passes away, whether in our county or maybe in another state. They let us know, and then they call us to go to the house and actually tell them, that is not a fun job at all, of course, especially if they don't know what's coming. So they come out there to help us out with that. SWAT team, and I'll touch on that, and the computer forensics, well, let's get to that. So our drug task force, see if the rest can come up here. There we go. No, I skipped it. So our drug task force is multi-jurisdictional. It has Cottage Grove Police Department, Woodbury Police Department, as well as a couple of our deputies. That creates that narcotics unit, or the drug task force. It's only about 5 people for this whole county. And to be very honest, they're very busy. There's a lot of work, and it's hard for them to catch up with some of that. The drugs that they're mostly getting, I'll tell you, it goes in a cycle. Marijuana is always out there, right? There certainly was a huge kick, if you guys remember, with the meth that was out there. That's kind of gone to the wayside. Now it's like more heroin and then cocaine, and it just kind of goes in a cycle with different things. And then they try all this weird stuff, like fentanyl, that they're putting in some of these drugs, and you might have heard some of that on the news. That is some pretty scary stuff. So much to the point that we tell our deputies, if you see something you have any inclination that might be having laced with that or trace amounts of that, don't touch it, because all you need is a little bit to make contact, and that could stop it right there. So the drug world is kind of a scary world with that, alone from what they have to do on a day-to-day basis, just dealing with that clientele. can be very dangerous. Excuse me. Some of the things that they start with could either be on their own. They might be talking, or some confidential informant might call in and say, hey, I know this is going on at this house. Here's some tips. I can help work with you to try to maybe get these guys. A lot of it is actually done by us who work on the street. When they stop a car and they end up having drugs in the car, then we provide the narc guys that information, and then those narcotic guys and gals work with that person to see, one, where'd you get it from? Two, are you going to work with us so we can get that bigger guy and take him out of the picture? So they're very busy with what they do. They do also work with federal agencies, so like the DEA, Drug Enforcement Administration, but they also work with FBI, ATF, alcohol, tobacco, firearms, all those different capacities. The SWAT. So our SWAT is also multi-jurisdictional. It's made up with deputies, but also every other city within the county. And that actually just happened just as of recently. For many years, it's 21 years, the SWAT team was created to be multi-jurisdictional to work with other cities. So all these cities in the county created this team. There was one city that was holding out up until this year, that being Oakdale. And Oakdale now this year joined in, so now every city police department is part of this SWAT team. Overall, it's about 35 tactical members, and what I mean by that is the ones that wear the vests, that go through the doors, surround the house, in the armored vehicles. You have an additional, I would say 8-ish for our tech team. Now what I mean by our tech team is they're the ones that actually work the robots that go into the house, or even like a throwbot, literally you can throw it in and then they can, do their thing. Pole cameras where you can, if you got to look in an attic and you think someone's up there, you take this pole, you put it up there and you look on the screen to see if someone's hiding, right? So that's the tech team. And then we also have our negotiators. And there's probably a good, I would say 10 or 12 of them. It works out to be around 55 people that make up this whole team, and that's a lot of people. So when you see a SWAT team out and maybe roads closed, that's what's coming. You got about 55 people that are coming to deal with that one problem there. Now, some of the things that we deal with are pretty obvious, right? The hostage type situations that you guys might hear or see. We also deal with maybe those really high risk warrants, the people that are really bad, right? Really dangerous that we need to get. That's maybe when the SWAT team will be used. A big thing that seems to be on the uprise are barricaded subjects. So maybe they committed a crime, a dangerous crime, and we want them, but they barricade themselves either in their house or maybe in their girlfriend's house. Then they did something and whatever, right? They barricade themselves. Now those can be very long and drawn out. If nobody's in there with him or her, it's just a lone person. So now time's kind of on our side. We're not going to rush in there to go get them because we don't want to risk our lives to just go arrest somebody. We want to try to get him to come out to us. Does that make sense? So we don't want to send our guys in to just get killed when nobody else is at risk in there. Now if there was a hostage in there, right? Someone being held against their will, then we will go in. Even if it means we're going to get shot. We're going to go in and we're going to go try to help that person. So that's kind of the stuff you have to think about when you deal with these situations. They're not quick, they're not easy, they're complicated. A lot of things you have to check off before you move to the next step per se. But nonetheless, be glad we have it. I get asked the question a lot, how often does the SWAT team get used? That's a really hard question to answer because some years it could be hardly at all and some years it could be a lot. So I'll tell you on average it's about once a month. This year I think we're pretty much right at that, if not just a little bit above. So our human trafficking unit, it's a sex crimes unit. We just started that this year. We got a grant from the state to be able to create this unit, and it's made up of 3 people, it might be 4 pretty soon. And you guys know, obviously, you know the Super Bowl came here, right? Super Bowl is one of the biggest, #1 human trafficking events. So that was a big push as well. Since the Super Bowl was coming, that probably helped us being able to create this unit. Their main objective is honestly to, one, find maybe these women or men that are prostitutes. And their first goal is to get them help, to get them out of there and get out of that world. That's their goal. Sometimes they have to be maybe charged, like given a ticket for prostitution to start that process to get them out of it. But that's their #1 goal, because who do they want to get? They want to get those guys who captured them, who got them stuck into this world, who gives them the drugs. They want to catch them. The pimp is what they call them. So they work on trying to catch them. They also will work on the people that use this service, right? They call them Johns, typically. So majority of the men who order up or say, hey, I want a prostitute, and they meet up with this person, they try to nail those people as well, because they're just as much the problem as the big guys, all right? Unfortunately, it's becoming a really big problem, and you probably have heard a little bit more about it now, but boy, if you heard some of the stories that's happening across the world, it's sad. It's really sad and scary. It is a huge problem just across the whole world with this. With this, water parks and trails. So we patrol all the lakes within our county. We also patrol the rivers. So obviously you guys know we have 2 rivers that we deal with, the Mississippi River as well as the St. Croix River. A majority of our river is St. Croix. We just have a smaller section of the Mississippi, but nonetheless, we do patrol both. We always have at least 2 boats on the St. Croix, and we usually have 1 boat on the Mississippi, again, just because there's less space on the Mississippi that we patrol. Doesn't mean that we don't go to other jurisdictions to help them out, because Water Patrol, as you guys may or may not see, at least on the rivers, especially on the St. Croix, it gets really busy out there in the summer. They always can use help. So they work with other jurisdictions quite a bit to be able to get whatever accomplished, all right? They will obviously deal with any boating infractions, boating while intoxicated, so BWIs instead of DWIs. They also deal with the drownings that might happen on the rivers, lakes, or even in pools or parks, stuff like that. So they stay definitely busy in the summer. However, the winter is a whole unique thing as well. These guys also do the snowmobile patrolling in the winter. And with that, we also still have drownings, right? So people will use their snowmobiles, go across lakes with thin ice, or go on the river, which I think is absolutely insane. Because the river is constantly moving. So it's unpredictable with the ice or you name it. You just can't predict that. So I remember it was a while ago. I was working a South car and the snowmobile went into the water. It was sad because you had an idea where he went. You could see some of the marks on the ice where he was trying to get up, but we couldn't find him. He was underwater for years before they were able to find him. He was in a deep pocket in the river. It was 90 feet deep in that section, and they just were not able to find him until they would go back every year a couple times trying to see if they could find him. Eventually they found him, so good for the family on that, but still sad. So they have that challenge to deal with as well. They have a lot of reserves that help them. That's one of those volunteer units. Now our reserve deputies will help out in water patrol. They'll help out with snowmobiles. They'll help out with maybe park patrol in our county parks as well. But they also help us out with maybe any natural emergencies we might have. So let's say a tornado came through here. They would help maybe with the perimeter security. Or if we had crime scenes, they might help with the perimeter security on that. If we have lost people where we need to go search an area, they'll help with that. So we rely on our volunteers quite a bit. Our office probably would not function with the amount of licensed or paid people if we did not have all those volunteers. It just wouldn't be possible. We wouldn't be able to do what we could do without them. So we're very grateful. The mounted patrol is just like it sounds. It's horses, and they help quite a bit with maybe searching for lost people or evidence when people throw evidence off into the woods or trees or fields or you name it. They can also be used, you'll see them for maybe parades and other things like that as well, just for a showcase per se. But each volunteer unit have their own importance with that. Also on there, I don't think I did mention, you can see we have Forest Lake, there's a dedicated boat. Big Marine, there's also a dedicated boat. We have a lakes boat where it's a pickup and a boat that just drive around, maybe stopping off in different lakes, patrolling them. We also have park deputies. Now those ones in particular patrol our county parks, not city parks, but county parks, and they'll deal with any maybe infractions that might happen within those limitations there, or jurisdictions. So as the Sheriff's Office, this is what our chain of command is right now. Like I said earlier, Sheriff Dan Starry, our sheriff, he's the top dog, all right? After that is our Chief Deputy Brian Mueller. Then we have at least 5 commanders. Make sure yep, I counted right, that's good. So we have our 5 commanders, 1 for the patrol division, 1 for investigations. We also have one for the, they call it administrative, but it's more like special projects. They're the ones that oversee kind of all that random stuff. We're talking like fleet meaning all of our squad cars, civil, serving papers, dispatch, dispatch. So that's what that administrative person does. And then we also have our courts division, which is security for our courthouse, because that's obviously something we do as well, and our jail commander. The only one that is not licensed, meaning not a licensed peace officer, is our jail administration commander. Then it's sergeants, corporals, which we only have right now in court security, and some in corrections, and then our deputies. So, get all these out here. So here's some things that we do, right? We have contracts with those cities in particular. So, and I know it's cut off there. It says Afton, Birchwood. Sorry, I'm kind of right in your way, aren't I? Afton, Birchwood. You got Delwood. You guys know where those areas are, right? So think Delwood is Pine Tree Apple Orchard, which, by the way, is delicious. I love it. Grant, Hugo, Lake Elmo, St. Croix Beach, Afton, St. Mary's Point. That whole area is kind of, they all work together to create a contract, one contract. So that deputy patrols all those cities because they're just all meshed together right there. Obviously Newport you guys know about, and all the other ones there. So those are all cities that we actually have contracts with, which means they want an officer there either 24 hours a day, or they want an officer there from a certain time period in a day. So for example, Scandia and Grant, their contracts are written up so that they want to have only one deputy, so they're paying for one deputy, and they want them to work between the hours of, we'll just say 8 to 4, or maybe the afternoon hours, right? 2 to 10, all right? And then that's it. So then those cities are just like Denmark Township. Now they're not going to have an officer in there dedicated during that time period. It'll be the general deputies that would be responding to a call that happened in that jurisdiction. And that's just it's their choice, and that's fine. It's what works for them. Most of our licensed officers are in the patrol division. I will say we have roughly, now if we count our part-time deputies typically work with Water Patrol. We're roughly around 125 licensed police officers. Then the other, to make it up to 250, which it's a little more than that now, is then the correctional staff, right? The ones that work the jail. But we also have our records people, we have our dispatch. So that's kind of what makes up that over 250 people. But licensed people alone is about 125. Some of these specialized units that fall under the patrol realm are listed right there. So community engagement, canine, field training, and firearms. So to go into those just a little bit. Side note, this is just kind of a map of where some of the areas where those stars on there is where we have our substations, all right? So our deputies don't necessarily report directly to the sheriff's office in Stillwater. The deputies that are assigned to those contracts will report to those cities and start their shift from there. It cuts the drive time from the sheriff's office to the actual patrol area. Those deputies that are not assigned a contract, they are considered general deputies, which means they're going to work kind of in a general area. And we have the county divided up into 4 sections. So think of probably right about here and up is our north car. Here to about 36, Highway 36 is our north center. Between Highway 36 and Interstate 94 is our south center. And then from 94 all the way down is our south car. So that's 4 people there. So think of it as those 4 people are the backup for these contract areas. So if they're calling for help, the south car that works down here is going to drive there to help them out. Okay. Hugo's asking for help. The north car would drive there to help them out. And depending on how big the call is, you might get a lot of people being sucked into one location. Yes, sir.
How come Great Cloud Township's not on there?
Well, good question. It's not on there. You guys get a lot of coverage from Cottage Grove.
St. Paul Park.
Or St. Paul Park, my apologies. Yes. We don't, I'll be honest, most time that we're down there is typically papers. We don't have too much involvement down there. These guys down here have pretty much have that locked up. And the nice thing is, like I said earlier, the PDs and the sheriff's office, like they work together really well. So Cottage Grove, St. Paul Park, if they know we're tied up, let's say the south car in particular, right? So if the south car's tied up helping out Newport or in Afton or whatever call, and another call comes in somewhere down here, Cottage Grove, St. Paul Park, those guys will pipe up and they'll say, hey, we'll come and help until you can get there. And obviously we do the same for them. If they're tied up in something, we'll go there to take a call for them if they need help and so on. What else was going to cover on that? Yes, I think I nailed what I wanted to say on that. Okay, so here are some responsibilities. Obviously respond to 911 calls, emergencies, medical emergencies, anything like that. We assist other agencies, which I just said. Obviously we enforce state law and local ordinances. We don't do the federal, all right? Obviously we have to be alert and suspicious of what's going around. The benefit of having officers work in a contract or in a city in particular, they know what looks out of place, right? They know what looks right, they know what doesn't look right. So that's a benefit of having an officer or officers or deputies work in a city full-time. Extra patrol requests, right? So maybe when you guys have issues with speeders in areas, you would call your PD or your sheriff's office, say, hey, we're having a big problem with speed or people running through the stop sign, or you having houses, vandalized. That's what extra patrols are. Vacation checks for us, that's a free service we offer. So if someone's out of town and they're going to go, let's say they're a snowbird, right? You go south for the winter and you're going to be away from your home for a period of time. You can call in a vacation check request to the sheriff's office. And if you live in a jurisdiction that we directly patrol, then we will check that periodically through the time period that you're gone. If we stumble upon your house and something happened, like it was broken into, or maybe, I don't know, water's leaking because a pipe froze or something, then we would call you and say, hey, there is a problem here. Who's your local person that's close by that can come? And we can try to at least temporarily solve this problem, right? So, food for thought. Community engagement has become a really big thing, especially this year. Sheriff Starry became sheriff about 1.5 years ago when Sheriff Hunton retired. Now I say retire, but he actually went to go work for the Minnesota Sheriff's Association. So Sheriff Starry, when he became sheriff, he realized, as you guys know, the way law enforcement interacts and or is looked at is different than what it was, I don't know, 7, 10 years ago. Realized the importance of engaging with the community, right? Kind of tightening up those bonds, having a better interaction with people, just making that a better thing, because honestly, and you guys know, we can't do our job ourselves. There's no way. We have to have the help of you to be able to do our job. So he's like, we need to create a group, and we need to get out there, and we need to engage our public, and we need to be, just get to know people. So I would say we've always done that, but not to the capacity that we're doing it now. I would say a couple years ago, we'd probably have maybe a handful of events, maybe 10, 15. This year on our spreadsheet, and I just even added more, we have just over 100 that's on our list of things that we have done and we're going to do. So he's done a lot of work with that. And again, our patrol works very closely with all those other units I talked about earlier, the last point on here, right? So it works with our narcotics unit, the human trafficking, it works with our investigators or SWAT teams very closely, because it's information passing is what it is.
What does SWAT stand for?
Specialized Weapons and Tactics. So again, the SWAT team, how do I put it? If there's something big that's going on, and the officers that are working the street don't have either the training or the equipment to deal with it, that's when that team will be activated. They have more training and more equipment and trained on the equipment to be able to deal with whatever it is. So yeah, I guess I kind of jumped the gun. Community engagement, so big part now, like I just said and you found out. These are obviously just a small bit of the things that we do. You guys obviously have probably heard of Shop with a Cop. You do it in Christmas. We also did one just recently for back to school with kids that might be less fortunate. Cops and fishing, we do that in Landfall as well as Lake Elmo Park Reserve now. Cones and Cops, we just did that a few times in a few locations. We did that in Selma's. You guys know where Selma's is? Oh, tell me you know where Selma's is. Okay, all right. Yes, it is delicious. Side note, that's where I actually grew up. I grew up in Afton, just up the hill behind, going to the west from Selma's there. So near and dear to me, my heart, of course. We still teach DARE. Yes, that is a thing still. And we do that in some schools. Night to Unite, you guys know that as well. Safe Summer Nights, that's usually sponsored actually by the attorney's office and another organization that donates food like hot dogs and burgers, and it's just to bring the community together. Coffee with a Cop, we do a Citizens Academy. We just started it up again last year, and no doubt we'll probably do it again this coming year. Neighborhood Watch and CPTED. This thing down here is Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. All right, so that's literally going out to a business or a house and saying, here's some tips to make your house less of a target for anybody that might want to break into your house. So that's something that we offer. A lot of local PDs also offer that as well. Not all of them, but some of them do. K9. I tried to get a K9 here. Unfortunately, that was not going to happen. We're kind of definitely in the thick of things going on right now. Like Taco Days up in Scandia is a big thing. I don't know if you guys have ever been there. They like tacos. So that's going on today along with other things. So I apologize. I did try to get one. But we do have 7 K9s as a total. 6 of those K9s are specifically assigned to patrol. And the thought is behind it, you always have at least 1 K9 on during whatever given time. So with the 6, there's 2 that work days, 2 that work afternoons, 2 that work nights. They work opposite schedules so that you always have at least 1 on. Other than maybe a vacation of someone taking, typically we'll have 1 on. Those guys are trained in these things here, so apprehension of a suspect, maybe tracking someone that maybe fled from us, or someone who might actually be lost. Maybe they have dementia and they just wandered away. So we will use dogs to do that as well. Building searching. So if a house or a business is broken into, they'll go in, we'll use the dogs to clear, and as we send the dog out, we'll down the dog, and then we'll clear what the dog cleared, just to make sure. Move up to the dog, then we'll send the dog out as he clears, and we'll down him, and then we'll move up. And then they're also trained in finding narcotics or, illegal drugs. So they actually have quite a bit. We also have the 7th dog. The one dog is assigned specifically to our narcotics unit. And our narcotics dog, again, they only do just narcotics, and they will be used on maybe search warrants that they do, or maybe searching of cars as well, when they stop a guy who maybe they just bought drugs from. Or schools will also invite this dog in particular to their school to search school lockers to make sure there's nothing hidden in any of those as well. They typically choose that dog versus the street dogs in the schools, honestly, just because people are a little more intimidated by street dogs versus our just narcotics dog. This dog is, let me back up. These 6 dogs are either German Shepherds, Belgian Malinois, or they're a mix of those two. That's pretty much what they are. The reasoning for going with those, they're both great breeds, honestly. German Shepherds and the Belgians, they're smart dogs. German Shepherds will typically use their nose more than using their eyes, which is what you want, to use those senses. However, their lifespan is a little shorter, whereas the other dogs, Belgian Malinois, it could be a German, a Dutch, there's different mixes there, but they will typically last or live a little longer or have that drive a little longer. However, they might use their eyes just a little bit more than their nose. Long story short, though, the way our training program is, I understand this might, obviously it sounds biased, but I kid you not, our dogs are so good. You would be absolutely amazed. They've won awards at the state trials. So once a year, they have to do trials in the physical stuff, right? So the apprehensions and obedience, right? Staying by your side, that stuff. And also once a year in the narcotics. And our dogs typically will come back with some awards, whether it's first place in something, second, third, you name it. And they're actually going to be going to the next month? Yes, this month. They're going to be going to the national trials because they did so well within the state. So I'm bragging about them a little bit because I like them, and that top picture is me. I did K9 for a while as well. Something that I told you I would tell you about, that FTO process, that field training officer process. This is something a new deputy has to go through in order to, be a deputy, right? It's not easy. It is stressful, and it is rigorous. It is pretty much a 14-week process. They go into 4 phases, and if they're doing really well, it might not be 14 weeks, and if they're struggling a little, we'll push it out a little further. But there is kind of that dead drop date. If you're not getting it, then the hardest part is saying, I'm sorry, you're not cutting it. You might want to look. Maybe you'll be a good cop, maybe just not for us, because sometimes county is very different than a city, very different. We might do the same jobs, but the responsibilities can be different, just with the size of the organizations and the areas that are covered, So these are just, I'll let you kind of read through that, but usually phase 1, we expect the new recruit to do maybe 25% of the work. Phase 2 is about 50. Phase 3, we expect them to do about 75% of the work, and by phase 4, they should be able to handle most of the stuff on their own. They could still ask questions, but acknowledging that they can ask questions is half the battle sometimes, right? These are some things that we train them in. Things you probably would expect. Traffic stops, they're not simple. Once you stop that car is that person's own little world, and you have no idea what they're doing. You could walk up to them and, you name it, anything could happen. They could be very respectful and just talk and, hey, yep, okay, great. They could jump out of the car, which has happened to all of us. Once you put your car in park, they jump out and they're aggressive. Like, what are you doing? Why are you stopping me? And they're coming at you. You don't know what they're thinking or what they're doing. Or they could be grabbing a gun that's sitting right by their door or in their pocket or stuffed under their leg. And when you come up, they might point that gun right at you. So it's difficult. And you try to prepare them for that, because if you don't prepare them for that and it actually happens, sometimes that's when, bad results happen. So domestic calls, also very dangerous, right? So we're talking about maybe siblings fighting, it could be husband-wife fighting, it could be kids and parents fighting, it could be cousins, it could be, you name it, roommates, significant others, you name it. There's a wide range of how those can go. They can just be verbal, they could be physical, they could be with weapons, right? And when I say a weapon, guys, anything can be a weapon, right? When I say weapon, you probably think gun, you probably think a knife, but don't forget, a baseball bat is a weapon. A big stick off a tree is a weapon. A pencil that's sharpened, if they're coming to stab you, is a weapon. That can kill you, right? A pencil, of all things. So we try to train them in that as well to make sure, don't think of a weapon just being those basic things we think about. You have to think a little bit bigger, a little broader, and how people can turn on you pretty quickly. Civil disputes, that again is just, this is my TV. No, this is my TV. Okay, you guys have to figure it out. You just try to calm them down a little bit. So also with civil disputes, though, the not so fun part is when you deal with maybe custody, right, of children. The poor kids are the ones that get stuck in the middle of this. So we deal with it delicately. Quite honestly, there's not much we typically can do. Even though a judge may say, yep, you have the right to see them on this weekend, you have the right to see them on this weekend, it doesn't give us the right to take the kids away and bring them there. And plus, that's the last thing we want to do. That'll traumatize the kids. So those are kind of delicate. But medicals, deaths, obviously there's a wide range of those, whether it's natural or if it's suicide or a homicide, right? Crashes, which can be so horrific to see. Crime scenes, just all this stuff on here. And there is so much more than that, but those are just some of the basic things we try to get across to them in that short time frame. This is just what the score sheet looks for them. Obviously, the lower the number, so 1 is on the far left, 5's on the far right, and the NRs or NOs or NRTs, that's maybe not responding to training, stuff like that. So they don't want to get into that section, and they don't want to really get into the 1s or 2s. They'd like to stay in the 3, 4, 5s when they go through this process. So last slide I have here just shows some pictures of things that I maybe wasn't able to cover per se, right? Court security, just side note, that's our courthouse now. That was our courthouse up until, I think, was it the 70s when they built the newer one. Have you guys ever been in that one? Yeah, it's kind of neat to go in there, isn't it? Did you go into the old jail part? Yeah, it's neat to see the history there, and just to think, that this is the area where the state started. I mean, how cool is that? To be able to go walk and see that, and it's a pretty neat site. So, court security, right? We have to provide security for our courts. I don't know if you guys have ever seen, people that kind of lost it in the courthouse, that go nuts because they know they're going to jail, so we have to deal with them. Sometimes people might, thankfully it hasn't happened, but you've seen it where people will come maybe with guns because they don't feel that they got a fair trial, and they might try to shoot their attorney or something like that, so we have to be there to provide security for it. Civil, I already talked about the papers a little bit. That's not a fun job either. Usually when you're serving civil papers, it could be anything from divorce papers to foreclosures of homes. I don't think there's a person that likes to serve civil papers because it's usually bad news you're giving them. But it falls on the sheriff's office to do it. Dive team, I mentioned that. Dive team you see on the far right, they will dive for those people that maybe have drowned, right? Our dive team is recovery. A rescue is more of the fire department's dive team. Those are two different dive teams. Now they might work together to help each other out, but they are kind of two different missions. We are more recovery. Fire department dive team is more rescue. Explorers, this is just the young kids you see there. Again, that's ages 14 to 21, like it says here, and those kids are technically volunteers. They help out. They help do stuff, but they also learn how to do the law enforcement job in general. And to be honest, that is what I did. When I was 14 years old, I started as an explorer with this office, the sheriff's office. So too bad those years don't count for retirement, because I'd be a lot closer, I think. But that's how I started. And kid you not, that gave me the best idea of what this job will be like. And I knew it. I knew it right away. That's what I wanted to do. So that's another unit that we have. And they also go and compete. And they do a really outstanding job. They've come back with national awards, first, second, third places and things. And first, second, and third in local competitions as well. So it is a really kind of basic, dumbed-down version of what the office is. There is a lot more. I could go into a lot more detail, but I'm not going to put you to sleep already like I might have. Hopefully, it kind of gives you just a basic idea of what the office is and what it's about and anything like that. So now that I've talked a lot, what questions do you guys have? And it's okay to ask. Yes, sir.
The Washington County Jail, is the sheriff's department, the guards in the jail?
Yes, so it's not, yes. The correctional officers in the jail are not licensed like I am, but they, so the only difference is they don't carry a gun, pretty much, right? But yes, we do have people, the sheriff's office employees, that do guard inside there, yes. Yep. Yes, ma'am.
I always thought it was kind of the wrong thing to do to pursue someone, so you're putting so many people in danger.
Sure.
What is the real purpose in that then?
Good question. That's a good question, and it's a fair question. What we look at is what crime did they do? Now, if it's somebody who has a taillight out or something like that, we're going to call it. We're not going to chase them for something silly like that. It's not worth the risk. Now, if it's somebody who has a felony warrant for homicide, meaning murdering someone, by not catching them, there's a good chance they might kill someone else. So now you kind of have to weigh that risk. Yeah, so that's the hard part with that. And we rely on our guys to make that good call. So then it also relies on us as sergeants, who are the street bosses. If they're caught up in the moment, it's on us to say, cancel. Let them get away. It's okay. But there are going to be those times that it probably, even though it's dangerous to do, it'll be safer to catch them than to let them go.
You kind of understand that.
Yeah, it is though. It's a hot topic, no doubt, because you're putting innocent people in danger, but you're also putting ourselves in danger and the bad guy too, right?
Do you have female deputies?
Yeah, good question. We actually do. We have quite a bit. Deputies that are working the road. So Laura Jackson, she's a deputy and she works in Newport. So you might see her driving around, probably this tall blonde thing. We have female deputies that are detectives right now. We have other females working the street as well. Civil unit we do in our courts. So yeah, we have them. We do. Yeah.
Yes.
How could I have someone come out to my home and tell me the crime prevention piece about how to protect my home?
Sure, that SEPTED thing. So if you just call your local agency, say, is there a way that I could have someone come out and just do a home assessment to see what I could do to make it safer? They should understand what you're saying by that, and if they offer it, they'll come, set up a day or time with you and do that. Otherwise, if not, they could always either ask us, we can help them out by doing that, or also if another jurisdiction around here helps them with that, they might have an agreement. I'm not really sure, but
Okay.
yeah, just your local law enforcement, and they will get that covered. Yes.
Do you still have some shared jurisdiction with Denmark Township with Hastings?
Good question. So pretty much like Kings Cove down there is kind of right where that border is. So they'll come across the bridge on that, just about that small part, but there's really kind of a small section there. Otherwise, no, we pretty much now, we do cover pretty much all of it. Yep. Yeah, good question. Any other questions? No? Surprised? Yeah.
Are you wearing the bulletproof vest and do you have to wear one whenever you're working?
Yeah, good question. I am, so it's on right now. And anytime we're in uniform, yes, we have to wear it. And if you, detectives, since they're not always out there, they will not have it on when they're in the office, but if they are going out to a house to maybe do follow-up, they might put it on, something like that. But yeah, it's a policy that we need to wear this, so, yeah, definitely. Good question. Any other questions? So, good deal. Just side note, I did actually bring little stuff for you guys. So if you would like one, they're actually coffee mugs. So feel free to take one. And yeah, I know. Figured I had the right crowd for that one. So if you guys would like one, feel free to take one. But if you have other questions you want to ask when you're leaving, feel free. And thank you for having me. Sorry for the confusion. So thank you for helping me out with the technology. So yeah. Oh, thank you.